Hello, today I'm going to be going through my very first watercolour painting. I thought I'd experiment using Sapo's face from my Discord server. If you haven't already joined, I'll put the link in the description, but we do weekly challenges, and this week's challenge is to post a selfie if you're comfortable with it, and then we can all paint each other, kind of get to know each other that way. Sapo very kindly donated his face to this cause, and he had this really lovely kind of shaft of light pooling across his face and on his glasses, so I thought that would be an interesting subject to paint traditionally, and see how I could kind of handle that lighting setup. Now, I have to say I do have a background in traditional painting. That's kind of how I learned to paint, but it was always with acrylic paints, so never really touched watercolour. I think I might have used it when I was in the kind of early stages of high school, but I haven't really taken it seriously and given it a proper go, so I thought I would. And it's a tricky thing because I haven't watched a tutorial on it. Maybe I should have done. I just thought that I'd like to jump into it and see what I can get out of it without being informed by anyone else's opinion. And much like the kind of message of my sketching daily video that I did not long ago, that's exactly what I'd like to talk about, which is that sometimes it's more beneficial for you to just do something and find out what works for you and how to get into it, and really dive into it, rather than carefully stepping around it and waiting for this perfect moment to start doing something. It's kind of a cheesy motivational line at this point, but I am telling you to just do it. For me, I was in a Discord call in this server, my public server, and I remember complaining about the fact that I had a watercolour set that I've never used, and I think someone told me to just do it and make a watercolour painting. So that's exactly what I did. I got my water together, I got my sketchbook that I've barely touched, and I did it, and it wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. Yeah, sure, there's a lot I could learn. There's a lot that I would have done differently, like the footage is obviously sped up, but at this point in the painting, which isn't that far in, I think I had already gone too far in layering paint, especially on the left side of the face where areas were getting a bit muddy. Obviously the problem with watercolor, if you think it's a problem, is that you have to work from light to dark. So when I started blocking in very dark areas like the nostrils and kind of areas around the eye, there was no way I could lift it out of that darkness. I don't know why I assumed I would be able to. I think in my idiocy I saw that there was white paint in this watercolor set that I have, and I thought, oh, if there's white paint you must be able to go lighter, but I was wrong, which is a shame. But I've seen a lot of watercolor paintings where they do it quite nicely. They have a lot of brush economy, and I think it's just getting into that kind of mentality where you're thinking slower and making more careful decisions. If you know me, if you've seen any of my other videos where I'm doing digital painting, you know that I'm very gung-ho about the way I paint. I see something and I just start going. It would have benefited me to plan it out a bit more and more carefully consider which areas had the same value, for example, and then I could go around and wash with that same value. I think I'm still yet to watch a watercolor tutorial. If you have any recommendations for YouTubers who do like good watercolor stuff, please do mention them in the comments, because I'm looking to learn. It was very therapeutic and lovely, which is another benefit of kind of going back and doing some more traditional stuff after years and years and years of just working digitally. But I did thoroughly enjoy it. I'm always kind of trying to advocate for people to experiment with their own work, with mediums, with how they use those mediums, with what kind of subject matter they're gonna paint, that kind of thing. And this was a good example of me experimenting and seeing what I could figure out without worrying too much, because you certainly can worry too much, and I know you can't help worrying a lot of the time, but sometimes you just need to push yourself out of your comfort zone, try something new. If I keep doing watercolor paintings, which I hope to, because I enjoyed it, I'm kind of trying to imagine what possible benefits I could bring back into my digital work. Number one's probably going to be brush economy, and being kind of economical with your values, but number two is going to be something which, again, I really feel like I need to work on, which is slowing down, being more careful, making informed decisions as I paint, maybe kind of reeling back in a lot of the intuition that I've had, because I've been painting for 4 or 5 years now, and it's great that I have this intuition. It's great that I've been able to kind of develop a muscle memory where I can make decisions without thinking, but that does have a negative side to it, which is I repeat the same mistakes quite often, or I'll just slap something down without thinking. Digitally, that's not so important, but obviously with watercolor it's kind of detrimental. Like, you might have just noticed that I went way too dark with the red on his lips, and then I kind of had to spread it around to the rest of his face, because otherwise it would look like he had lipstick on. It would look ridiculous. So I'm gonna try and correct that a bit later on. I think I try and get a cooler kind of lilac colour and wash over that area again. But I don't know much about watercolour, but even I know that I'm just adding to the mess. I'm basically adding on more layers that I can't get rid of, which is troubling. But yeah, I am excited to learn. It's nice and refreshing. I've been talking to people recently about art block and how art block can manifest itself, and how you can deal with art block. And one of the main things I've been thinking about is just refreshing yourself with a completely different thing, something still artistic, but something where, for example, if you were painting digitally and you had always been painting digitally, let's say you were really good at painting spoons, and then you have this art block and you can't paint a spoon for some reason. It's not going very well. It's ending up looking awful. At that point, you can blame the art block, which can get really frustrating because it feels like you're trying your hardest, but you're just not getting the results you want. If you try something completely new, you could, in theory, still blame the art block, but what's more likely is it's something that's completely new, and you can kind of shift the blame onto that instead, which is more reassuring. As you can see, I tried to brighten up the area on the nose and it just wasn't happening, so I got out my super special traditional brush, and that's my traditional eyedropper tool, and there you go, just fixing it in post. And I was quite enjoying this idea that you could mix media and do something in watercolor and then bring it into digital. I know that Craig Mullins and a lot of other artists have worked in the past by doing traditional sketches and paintings and then bringing them into Photoshop and painting over them. I didn't really do that. I didn't paint over it too much. I added a highlight here and there just where I thought it needed correcting. And this was the most satisfying part, because it was like I didn't just do this brand new exercise and experiment and it just went wrong and I left it. It was like, okay, I've done this brand new thing and now I can spend just a teeny bit more time at the end trying to fix what I think went wrong. It's always good to reinforce your own critique by actually performing the critique yourself. So I wanted to mess around in Photoshop for a bit, and this was just a good excuse. I think I curves adjusted it to try and get rid of some of the... It was very warm because the lights in my room are too warm. I should have photographed it in daylight, ideally. And then I was messing about with curves to try and get more contrast. I was putting different colours in the shadows using lighten layers. I was really having a whale of a time. And that's just something you should mess with. Again, I feel like a broken record, you know. I think people are going to get a fair bit bored with how often I go on about experimentation and how important it is and how you should mess about and play with ideas. And play really is the verb here. There's no kind of threat or danger. You're in a perfectly kind of safe environment where you can just play and experiment and find out what works for you and experiment with new tools. So the curves tool that I've used kind of extensively just while editing this painting, I've not really used before, but I'm beginning to see that it could be very, very powerful, because when you're using the levels adjustment tool, sometimes I feel as though it can mess up your colors a lot, whereas with the curves tool you can individually affect each color channel as well as the brightness. So it's something I need to mess with more, and that's another charm of experimenting and practicing things, is you're not only experimenting, but it's almost exponential in the sense that while you're experimenting you find something that you then need to experiment more with. So you're starting to create all these different avenues of exploration that you could go down, and it's really, really exciting. I guess if you're a nerd like me and you're strangely interested in how Photoshop tools function, it should be very, very exciting. And it's that excitement that's going to help you get over something like art block, I think. I've just kind of made a find edges layer and then applied a hue saturation layer on top just so I can get some funky colours in the shadow. I really do hope you've enjoyed this video. I got some feedback on the Sketching Daily video that apparently people enjoy my very tired ramblings, so I thought I'd make more. Please do leave a comment, telling me what else you'd like to see. I want to know if you want to see more watercolor videos, and kind of follow me as I try and get better at them over time. Hopefully, we'll see how good I get with watercolor. But yeah, please do consider subscribing if you haven't already, and have a wonderful day.